Hi, it's Michael Backman, and I'm here with Paul Bromberg. Paul, yet again, we're here to discuss another book you've written.
Hello, Michael.
Hi, Paul. Well, congratulations. Later Chinese Bronzes for the Scholar's Studio. This is the title of your latest book. Why don't you tell us about it?
Okay, Michael, happy to do so. Basically, about 9 years ago, I was trying to think of something that I would like to collect, having already formed 3 or 4 previous collections, mostly of Thai objects or Thai Chinese objects. And as I have a background in Chinese art, I thought it would be great to collect some. And I was trying to work out what I could collect, and one day I came across a small Chinese bronze scroll weight in the form of a mythical beast, and I thought it was quite enchanting, and I didn't really know anything about it, and I thought it would be fun to find out more about it. And I saw that there had been some research undertaken over the last 30 years or so, but really not that much. Certainly in English. And so I started collecting, and then about 2 years ago I thought it would be fun to try to put a book together about my collection, but more than that I actually wanted to include a couple of essays, one on the usage of paperweights in Chinese art, and the second on the form and function of what we now call later Chinese bronzes, and later being really from the 12th century to the end of the 19th century. And that is a term that kind of was developed only about 40 or 50 years ago. Before, people would say they were Song dynasty, Ming dynasty, Qing dynasty weights, but now generically any kind of bronze, any kind of bronze from that period is described as a later Chinese bronze.
I think it's also important that the book is on your collection, but for me what I really like is the fact that you have written several essays at the start, and it shows that you haven't simply accumulated objects, pushed them together, but you've analysed them, you understood why you've done it, you understand the background and the histories and so on. You've demonstrated that. So it's not another case of a vanity collection-based book.
Where it might be a vanity collection book, but I can't say. But what I can say is that with the previous collections, they kind of evolved. And one was benjerong, Thai porcelain,
yes,
made in China for the Thai market. Another was tea sets, porcelain tea sets, also made in China for the Thai market. And the third was Thai silverware, which I wrote a book about as well, but not about my collection. But I do have a collection of silverware, and those definitely evolved. As my taste changed, and also whatever became available in the market, my budget. But with the bronze collection, that started off very much as a paperweight or scroll weight collection, and scroll weights typically being a subsection of paperweights, smaller.
Are you saying, Paul, that the other collections, the first 2 collections or 3 collections, sort of grew organically? You noticed that you liked these things, and then you started to collect. Whereas with this collection on the Chinese bronzes, that you were kind of almost casting around, looking for what do I collect next, and you were looking for a gap.
That's exactly right. And what clearly, what did I like, and then what could I afford?
Yes.
And what's available.
Yes.
So all of those are important issues.
And also, as you were saying, it's something that hasn't been really published before, because when it comes to Chinese items, It's porcelain, it's jade, and if it's metal, it's the earlier ancient metalwork, Warring States type items. People forget about these sort of smaller items.
Well, for a long time, the later Chinese bronzes were disparaged because they were considered simply to be copies of archaic bronzes. And it was really only in 1990, well, maybe in the 80s, some of the London antiques dealers started to raise the profile of later Chinese bronzes. But in 1990, Rose Kerr wrote a book titled Later Chinese Bronzes, which was the first really published book on the subject matter. And from then on, they started to gain in popularity, and people started to consider more exactly what they were. And of course, this year as well, there's also a big exhibition at the Met in New York, which will move to Shanghai Museum in November this year.
Yeah, recasting the past.
Recasting the past.
The art of Chinese bronze, 1100 to 1900.
Exactly. And that magnificent exhibition, actually, I was lucky enough to go to New York in March and see the exhibition with the curator, Lu Pengliang. And but his scholarship is fantastic, and he has really given a lot of thought about the dating of these bronzes and their form and function as well. So his is a very broad overview. What I decided to do was to focus very specifically on smaller objects for the scholars' table.
Well, in fact, the two books go hand in hand. In fact, the Met's exhibition catalogue, which I have on my lap here, along with your book, Paul, the two of them actually work very well together because they're both singing the same tune in some respects. And of course, the Met exhibition does explain to us once and for all that, as you've just said, that these items are not sort of fakes or repros or something like that, but they're actually artworks in their own right, done to almost to honour previous art forms rather than to necessarily just simply copy them.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I had no knowledge that the Met was going to publish this catalogue or even hold this exhibition until probably the middle of 2024. And so it was just very serendipitous that my book, which had also been planned for over a year by that stage, came out at the same time.
Yeah. So most of your collection and most of your book is based on, as you said, weights.
Well, starting with weights, but then I expanded the collection. So what happened was that I really liked the weights, and then.
Can I just interrupt?
Sure.
And because while I think of it, sometimes you describe an item as a scroll weight, and on another object it'll be called a paperweight. Right. Is there a difference?
As I said before, scroll weight is almost like a subsection of paperweights. So paperweights, in my article or essay in the book, I say that paperweights comprise scroll weights, which are generally smaller. They comprise water droppers, possibly small incense stick holders, and basically they could be, and there are some like mountain ranges which are brush holders as well. So there could be many types of objects which have multiple uses, and they might be used as a water dropper but also as a paperweight. So I think the scholar would have had these items on his desk, and they would have been there to amuse him or to help his concentration or to give him inspiration. And obviously if they served multiple functions, then that was to the benefit of the piece, but they may or may not have done in any particular instance.
Do you think it was very much a northern Chinese phenomenon and very much centred on the capitals, or did it?
No, I think that these basically Chinese scholars operated all over China. Obviously, they were people who had passed this civil service examination, which was in Beijing, but they came from all over China, and then they were assigned as officials all over China, whether as magistrates or in whatever position. So I think that they did cover the entire country.
So on that basis, they probably the production of these were not. It wasn't necessarily centralised.
It wasn't. Right. And we know that there was certainly a thriving bronze casting industry across the Jiangnan region. So Suzhou, Hangzhou area now, But I believe also in the north and south there were also bronze smiths who were casting bronzes of all types. And I think in the Recasting the Past book, there are some examples from Sichuan and other areas of very fine bronzes. But again, those are much larger examples.
Indeed.
And they could be bells or large censers or incense burners.
So when it comes to the scholar's objects, the smaller items we're talking about, which is the subject of your book, do you think often they were part of gift exchange and presentation pieces?
They certainly were by the end of the Ming period in the 17th century. So again, each of these items was somewhat different, but with weights evolved from the Han Dynasty, so around the time of Christ. They were used as mat weights first. There was a game called Liu Bo, which was like a Chinese snakes and ladders, and those the mats were used to hold down. The mat weights were used to hold down a mat on which this game was played, and then over time, the weights would have been used as calligraphy developed, as Chinese painting developed on scrolls and on silk and paper. They would have been used to hold down the paper and silk, so that the wind didn't blow it over, and the artist or calligrapher was able to carry out their painting. So. By the 16th century, so maybe the 15th to 16th century, there was a massive increase in the production of scholars' objects. So the rise of the kind of Chinese literati class, scholar literati class, took place during the Ming Dynasty, partially because there was a very long period of peace. And it was a much more affluent period. And during that time, I think that the scholars became more established in their routines, in what they were doing, and therefore they started to not only use these items as being utilitarian items, but then they started to acquire them for status purposes.
It sounds quite romantic that the societies were getting richer, and so therefore there was a bigger class of literati. But do you not feel also that it simply maps the size of the growth of government?
Well, it did as well. It did as well, but because obviously as government became more reliant on more affluent people, more tax, then government grew as well.
Also, you had more civil servants and
the population grew as well.
Yes,
well, significantly.
And more administrators who therefore needed these sort of little objects. And then, of course, to curry their favour, you turn up with a lovely little...
Well, the other point was that for some of these people, they were sent to far-off places, and it wasn't like they were really enjoying being where they were, so they looked for distractions. And quite a lot of the romanticism of the scholar's studio was that it allowed the scholar official to forget about his daily routine and his daily chores, and that it gave him an escape, a place to escape.
That's interesting, because you're referring to the scholar official, because that kind of is what it is, isn't it? It's not really a scholar. It's more like the scholar official. They're kind of one and the same. They're kind of merged.
These were, in the Ming Dynasty, these were definitely scholar officials. Certainly later, more people, whether they were in commerce, took up calligraphy or painting, and therefore they also would have enjoyed these kind of scholars' objects.
I wonder, what about senior monks and people like that, the clergy, as it were?
Probably as well.
Probably,
they certainly used a lot of these objects. For instance, fly whisks,
Yes.
and ruyi scepters.
Yes.
These were used primarily by the clergy.
So the book,
First.
your book, features your collection. Now, we're very used to the phenomenon these days of a collection being published and then people rush it to market, i.e. the collection. Is that what's behind... That's a very vulgar way.
It's a direct question.
Are you going to flog this collection now that you've published it or not? What's the story, Paul Bromberg?
No, the answer is I won't be selling the collection anytime soon. I wanted to create a record of my collection, but equally I wanted also to provide an introduction to later Chinese bronzes in an accessible way that people could understand more about what these things are, what they're used for, because actually there's still relatively little known about them. Yeah. While I am still healthy, my intention is that I won't be selling the collection anytime soon.
Yeah. I think last year I wrote a book on lace, silver and gold, and someone said to me, they surprised me so much, and they said, oh, well, people will say you've simply done a book which has a lot of your pieces from your own personal collection in it because you just want to make it more valuable. And I was actually shocked. It hadn't occurred to me that you would do that, or certainly that I would do that, and I have no intention of selling my objects. And it kind of upset me because I thought, actually, the reason why I'm writing this book is because I do have a large collection, and I'm probably one of the best placed people to write such a book because I understand why I bought each piece and I understand why I put it together. So, you've got a personal stake, a financial stake in it, but not because you want to sell it later. I have no intention of selling it. Maybe I'll donate it all one day to a museum.
Well, I doubt I'll donate my collection, but I might donate certain pieces to certain institutions. That's a whole other discussion about whether the pieces that are donated to museums go on display or not. So that's an issue for me. But with this collection, I expanded it beyond the original scope. The original scope was simply going to be bronze paperweights. And then I had bought some pieces from Roger Cavern, the quite well-known London dealer in Chinese art, who's now retired. And Roger said to me, if you really want to cover this field, this genre, you should expand to other objects for the Scholars Studio. And so I thought that was a good idea. And then I really didn't know that much about what else was out there. And that, for me, is the fun part. It's doing the research on everything that I'm looking at buying or actually do buy. And that is really enjoyable. And that was the same for this book. I really enjoyed undertaking the research and then doing the writing. It's a very, I think, therapeutic activity, and certainly something that I enjoy doing. Now, as for the actual outcome, there have been two outcomes so far as a result of this. One is that, certainly I won't complain if the value does go up over time. That, it's no bad thing. But that was never the intention. But one of the outcomes from this book has been that I met in Hong Kong with the University of Hong Kong Museum and Art Gallery curator. And he liked the book so much and said they'd never had an exhibition of this type of scholars' objects. I would be willing to exhibit my collection. I said yes, absolutely. That to me is a great result from publishing this book.
Oh, it's every collector's dream, really, is that a serious museum will want to exhibit their collection.
Exactly, and again, I would like this to be seen, and shared as broadly as possible.
Yeah, and I think this, once again, it really shows the importance of private collectors as well, that this shouldn't all be socialised and put into government museums. Yeah. And in fact, it's still the case that private collectors have a really important role to play in filling gaps, doing the research and putting in the time that often, when maybe museum creators are too busy discussing the disabled toilet access in yet another meeting, private collectors are getting on and actually collecting, putting together collections, and most importantly, doing the research. And that's exactly what you've done with this book. And another thing also is that a lot of private collectors do often have as a focal point, or an aspiring focal point, that they will have a book on their collection, but very few people actually get around to it. You've done it a couple of times, so it's...
Well, the last time wasn't my collection, so but what I will say, the second outcome, or another outcome of this book, was that a museum curator actually did say to me how much they had enjoyed the book, and the fact that whereas a lot of the information might be available in places, but you really have to hunt it down, or even to see some of these objects, they're not easily accessible. There's now somewhere that you can come and access, or, this field. If you're interested in this field, there's one reference point for the Scholars Studio, for bronze objects in the Scholars Studio.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think again you are helping to push out the boundaries again by re-emphasising again that these items were not reproductions of earlier items, but are absolutely important art rights in their own form. On a related issue, and we should probably wind up with this perhaps, but this is always interesting to other collectors and buyers of antiques. Tell me about faking. And as we all know, it's an increasingly an important factor at the moment. Buying and dealing in antiques and collecting is a bit like walking through a minefield, increasingly so. And it feels like there are traps are being set for us everywhere, and you've got to be careful where you tread. So what, in your collecting sort of journey, as we say these days, when it comes to this area, what have you observed about faking and the trend in faking and the quantity and the quality of it?
Well, the faking has gone on for a long time. Even in the Ming Dynasty, fake bronzes were being passed as archaic when they clearly weren't. And the bronzesmiths were fantastic at creating patinas, so that it became extremely difficult, and still is extremely difficult, to date later Chinese bronzes. And that's an issue that I address, and also Lu Pengliang addresses in the Recasting the Past catalogue, because it's incredibly difficult to date these objects. I think there's more fakes being passed at auction now than there were when I first entered the field. So one of the reasons that I decided that I didn't want to collect ceramics, apart from the fact that they're easy to break, are Chinese ceramics, and that they're very expensive, of course, imperial ceramics being way outside my budget. But it's just because some people would say 90-95% of all ceramics being offered these days are fake. And there may be some truth in that. Jade is notoriously difficult to distinguish. It takes a long time, and there's a huge amount of faking as well. The bronzes, I thought when I started, even though my knowledge was limited, it was relatively easy to tell the fakes from the originals. But now I would say that I've seen a lot of reproductions. I won't say that they're out and out fakes, but reproductions in auctions. And again, I've seen reproductions that are clearly not as good as a piece that was 500 years older. But is the reproduction a modern reproduction, or was it a reproduction from the early 20th century, which is now an antique? This is another issue, and it's extremely difficult to tell exactly how old something is or when it was made.
On that note, maybe a slight sort of pause for thought there. But what I should say is how to get hold of this book. So let me just say the title again is Later Chinese Bronzes for the Scholars Studio, the Bromberg collection. So it's by Paul Bromberg. The publisher is Arts of Asia magazine, the well-known magazine produced in Hong Kong. It's been going for, what, 30, 40 years at least?
I think longer? It's now 55 years.
Oh, I should know that. It's 55 years because there was a 50th anniversary issue, which I remember very well. And so to find this at this point, to buy the book, you probably just Google Arts of Asia magazine. That'll take you to the Arts of Asia website. From there, you should be able to find where to buy this book. So again,
it's in the bookshop section.
Okay, there's a bookshop section, and again, Later Chinese Bronzes for the Scholars Studio. Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.